Could we touch the screen share before we do that? Or it didn't break. uh,
Yeah, I can share it again. Okay. Want to share your um, slides again? Okay.
did this come through okay?
Yeah, good. Working well. Okay, I think we can begin. Okay. So good evening from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and good afternoon to some of you. Okay, we have invited participants from all over the Indo-Pacific, from from the Maldives, India, Sri Lanka, all the way to Bhutan, and all the way to the other side, which is Fiji and Papua New Guinea. Okay, and today we're very happy to have Megan Anstos with us, who's going to join the IP Summit in November. And um, so Dr. Megan Anstos is with Venture Well. Okay, so maybe Megan can also talk about her organization and her journey towards to where she is right now. But her topic will be innovation for social good, reputational impact. So Megan has given us lectures before on social innovation. Okay, so I think this is a very relevant topic, especially for universities and researchers who want to not just to make money, but also to do good at the social level and to pursue innovations that benefit much more than people who can pay. Yeah, and have purpose. Well, let's all welcome Megan Anstos from VentureWell. Hi, Megan.
Good evening, Vlad, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all. And thank you to those of you who are putting where you're from in the chat. Please feel free to continue to do so. I'd love to see where you're coming from and find out what kind of geographical diversity we have tonight. As Vlad said, my name is Dr. Megan Aanstoos. I have my doctorate in biomedical engineering, and I'm also R2TP. And I want to just give a couple of disclaimers. I sit on the board for AUTUM, which is the Association for Tech Transfer Professionals out of the United States. And I also sit on the board for ATTP, which runs R2TP certification. So just keep in mind that I'm speaking from my own voice, not from AUTUM, ATTP, or VentureWell. And at VentureWell, I am a senior program officer, and I support our Rapid Acceleration of Diagnostics program with the goal to bring tests to people in need within a quick time, allowing our companies to produce a test, go through regulatory, and bring it to market within 18 to 24 months. So one of the things that I like working at VentureWell, and one of the things that drives me as a passion, is realizing that when we develop technologies, we don't do it just to make money. We don't do it just to show that we can. We do it because we want to make a better impact on the world. And that sense of creating better impact, that sense of helping to make our world a more comfortable place to live, is in fact the goal of social innovation. So tonight I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it is, how you can use it to help increase your reputational impact of your institution, of your innovators. But this is also going to be a chance for us to talk together. So I'm going to go through a few slides, but I want you to think about what's going on. Feel free to drop questions in the chat, although I may or may not get to them before we get to the end of the presentation. And then I want to spend some time with us just talking through what does this mean. What is the value to you? What is the value to your organization or to your country in order to engage within the social innovation and social good areas? So what is social innovation? Well, social innovation involves the creation and implementation of novel ideas, spanning products, services, and processes, while promoting new forms of social interactions and partnerships. So all of you have probably run across some version of social innovation out in the marketplace. Some of the more well-known examples from my country include something like Tom's Shoes, which donate one pair of shoes for every pair of shoes bought. Another example of social innovation is Mark Cuban's Good Medicine, where he makes medicine at cost and makes it available to people who don't have insurance. So social innovation can be something that is new and novel, or it could be something older. So for example, if you've ever partaken in a barter community where you offered somebody food in order for them to clean your house, or you offered somebody the opportunity to ride on the back of your scooter to get to work faster. So social innovation doesn't have to be exciting and big and bold and expensive. Social innovation is just that process of making your world just a little bit better of a place to be. So there's not really a definition per se, but there are shared goals to social innovation. Those goals include building people-centered solutions for future-focused communities. And we all want to live in a place where everybody feels welcome, where everybody feels included. And so by enhancing economic, social, and ecological growth, we can get to a point where we have a better world, and therefore increasing the impact of the technology for the betterment of our society by addressing those core societal needs. And those needs can include things like having food, having shelter, having comfort within the community, knowing that you'll be safe. It can also be things like ecological impact, or it can be things that are a higher order, like making it faster or easier to get to work if you are blind and you need assistance with technologies. So social innovation is a mission-driven investment, and that's the way that you need to come at it when you're talking to your legislators, your policymakers, your funders. Right now, it's often seen as a byproduct of technological innovation. But when we say byproduct, that means almost a negative effect. It's something that happens on the side. It's not the goal or aim or the purpose of what you're working on. So you want to refocus that conversation, and you want to come at it from a mission-driven investment in society in order to foster engagement and maximize public impact. And that way, those innovations that are being worked on can reach the people and industries they're meant to serve. So for example, if I were to develop a prosthetic for an arm amputee, that prosthetic could cost anywhere from $200 to $50,000. And that differential is coming around what social impact and mission mean. So that $50,000 arm probably is going to drive profit for the company over making it more accessible to someone who actually needs that device to function in their daily life. So the $200 arm might provide more benefit to people, but the only way it's going to get funded is by having venture capitalists or NGOs who are willing to pour money into a company that's not making it. So social innovation does have to find that balance of opportunity, purpose, and economic investment in order to make sure that it really and truly is accepted within the culture and the community that you're working within. So one of the things we look at in the university context, and this is from Mentor's paper, you'll see the reference at the bottom there, is that at the university, we're looking for how to use human capital being our students and our faculty. They want to know how they can contribute, how they can get engaged, maybe how they can get a job later on. So they're looking for those entrepreneurial opportunities. We're also looking for financial resources. So what are some of the incentives or the support systems that can be put in place or that can help to make somebody more likely to work on a social impact innovation over something purely economic and technological driven? We're also putting processes and structures in place So a lot of institutions have a mission to do better for their community, and that value and belief system can help to move forward and propel the social innovations that you want to put forward. And then finally, there's stakeholder expectations. And stakeholder expectations is really important because you have members of the institution, you have board, you have people in the community, you might have your federal government, and all of them have a certain expectation for this institution to succeed. But at the same time, that means you're open to conversation. And when it comes to driving social impact, you want to have that mission in mind so that you can come to your stakeholders and you can talk to them about how the value of what you're working on will help to set all these other things. So as a tech transfer or knowledge exchange office, your job and your goal is to transfer what's being created within your institution into your community. And so what you have to do is you have to think about what is the value creation that's being done with this product, with this service, with this process that we're working on. What is the value delivery mechanism? So even if we've created value, if we can't deliver that value to the community, it's not as powerful. And finally, how do we capture the return on that value, not just for the product or for the innovators, but for the community and for our stakeholders that I mentioned earlier? So what we're really looking at is that we're doing a combination of technological innovation and social innovation. Ideally, we call it social technical innovation. And with that, we can both impact the economics and the social value creation. So whenever you're working on this and you're developing your mission, you're developing the statements that you want to share, keep something like this in mind because you want to have that stakeholders, you want to have all of that bottom level context as part of what you're trying to talk about, as part of the messaging you're using, and feed back in that economic and social value creation to that reputation that your stakeholders are expecting you to uphold. So one of the first things you want to do is identify what are those social challenges within your community. So you can work with your innovators to identify those challenges and experiment with ways to help them. So how can technology help? Do you need partners? Do you have incubators or innovation centers? And what are unique and novel aspects do you offer to solve the challenge? And I say this with a twist. So we know in order to patent something, it has to be unique, novel, and non-obvious. But we also want to find those unique and novel aspects for the challenge itself. So for example, if we're looking at food scarcity, you might initially say, oh, we want to develop a plant that is able to withstand low water quality or times of drought. But what is it specifically that this innovation is offering to solve that challenge of low water quality? Is it something that will be easier to grow? Can it be grown indoors? Does it need less soil? Is it something that grows on an off season? Is it something that can use alternative nutrients? So working with your innovators in this first column, your goal is to build the capacity in your office for social enterprises. A lot of times when we're looking to build up our tech transfer offices, we're looking for people who sit at that intersection of science, business, and law. But a lot of times those people don't necessarily have that social enterprise mindset. And so you want to invest in that. You want to bring people who feel comfortable with the social aspects that you're trying to build and who can help to enhance that reputation that you're looking for. You also want to include open innovation or social innovation within your intellectual property policy. So hopefully, as part of this program that you're in, you have talked a little bit about intellectual property policies, and we'll continue to do so. Those are an important part of what we do. But you want to talk about those with an eye towards social innovation. Who owns it? What is the expected return on investment for it? What if you can't actually make money on something? Is your institution still willing to invest within it to make sure that the social impact can happen? So by building some of these things early on into your policies, not only does it give you coverage to go after them, but it also gives you that return and that story in alignment with that mission statement. And finally, make sure you're inviting innovators to collaborate and talk through a structured guided program. A lot of social innovation happens because different stakeholders with different mindsets come together. So we mentioned that farmer who might be very interested in having a plant that can withstand a drought season. But maybe that farmer's not a geneticist. And maybe you bring a geneticist in or a biologist in. Maybe you bring somebody who has climate expertise in. And so as the tech transfer office, your job is to create that opportunity for conversation, to create that collaborative culture, to allow people to share and talk and fast test what's going on. And so that's the next step here, is that you need to scale those solutions. So offering specialized training, mentorship, and consistently strong programmatic opportunities are key to attracting and sustaining engagement and interest. So for example, you might set up a partnering situation with collaborators, such as the government ministries or private companies or NGOs, other partners who can provide capital, reputation, and exposure. With that partnership, you might set up a hackathon to do a fast fail, so that in one day you have 100 people who come together and you give them the top 3 challenges that you identified. They then test rapidly and look at whether those solutions are possible. So you're experimenting with incentives like that. They might get paid to come to that. They might get given an opportunity to be put in front of some of those collaborators. You might even think about doing a 1-for-1, where if they participate in this, you work with them on another invention that they have. You want to provide that mentoring in that space, that funding and that education. So in order to really drive this forward, it has to be incorporated in that mission I mentioned earlier. And so you'll go to your stakeholders and you'll say, in order for us to truly have the reputation we want to build, we need to put money into it. We need to put space into it. We need to have somebody who can come in and mentor our faculty and our students to give them an understanding of how to talk about it, how to find competition to apply for, how to engage at a level that will really and truly impact our region. One of the things we talk about a lot in tech transfer that truly holds for social impact innovation as well is knowing your stakeholders. So when we're talking about providing education to our faculty, we're not just talking about providing education on patents. We're not just talking about providing education to start up a company, but we're also talking about how to give them the insights that they need to test out those social impact ideas. So going out into the community, doing stakeholder interviews, putting together a value proposition canvas. And those things are all going to be important along with the development of the licenses, the agreements, and the other legal protections. Social innovation is not an antithesis to technological innovation. It can be a component of it. So you might still need to get a patent on whatever somebody has come up with. You're going to want to protect it through a license agreement, even if it's something you're offering for free. So let me give you an example from when I worked at the Ohio State University. And we had enormous amounts of research dollars that came to that institution, around $1 billion US a year. But one of the things that I worked with was a set of guidelines, of standard operating procedures from our nurses and our doctors for the hospital system that was at the institution. And they said, well, we created these because we want our patients to be safe. We want patients to be treated in a manner that we know is validated, is not going to cause harm to our patients. So they put together this list of guidelines, and there were over 400 of these guidelines. And they said, we want to put these out into the world. And we can, certainly, in my office said, well, we'll publish these on a website if you want. But there's more value in putting on a license around that. So we copyrighted those, and then we put on a user license agreement. And what we did was we said, if you are a regional hospital who has the first round of triage of these patients, you get to use our guidelines for free. If you are a corporation who's looking to develop health policies, health AI technologies, you have to pay us for those guidelines. And we set up individual licensing agreements with each of these institutions. The license agreements for the regional hospitals, which is simple as when you download an app on your phone and you click through, and I know nobody ever reads those, even though you really should, but those end user license agreements for what we put in place for the hospitals And the reason for that was the mission of the hospital, which was to get patient care standardized, to make sure that patients had a safe and easy and effective way to get what they needed. One. Two, the mission of the hospital was to bring patients in. So if these small regional areas were using our guidelines to work with patients, and it turned out that they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the ability to fully treat the patient, they would think about us because our guideline was right there for them. So they would send those patients to our hospital. And the value of sending one patient to our hospital was over 200 times more than the cost that we would license out one of those guidelines for. So there was still economic impact. But we had the mission, which was to help patients. We had the economic impact, which was to drive revenue for our hospital. And finally, we had the value that the stakeholders creating those procedures were seen within the community. So our doctors and our nurses who were putting their time and effort into developing these were seeing the tech transfer office on their side. They were seeing that we were excited and interested and engaged in what they were doing, and they would come with other ideas and inventions. They were excited to start working with our office because we were giving them a platform and a resource to do what they thought was the most important. So when we're talking about scaling these solutions, it's not as easy as an ABC 1, 2, 3 kind of format. It's complicated. You really need to think about all the factors that come into this and keep that reputation in mind. What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for being helpful? Do you want to be known for driving a mission to help to support your community? Do you want to be known for being able to find that balance of ecological, economical, and social impact? The next thing that we look at is how to sustain it. So great, you've done it once, you had great success, your hackathon went off, but you need to keep doing it. And in order to keep doing it, the institutionalization is key to those enduring solutions. So you need to have that steady, reliable funding, and that's where getting that partners comes in. So if your reputation went well with that one time, you can come back to them. You can say, look at the success that we've had. Look at what we're driving within our community. You also want to work with your policymakers and your lawmakers because it might be something that you incorporate in. For example, in the state of California, we saw that women were just not being able to get positions on boards of prominent companies. So the state of California passed a law that said by 2023, 30% of all boards had to have a woman for any of these companies to get state funding. And all of a sudden, guess what? Women started coming on board. Those companies wanted that funding. We saw a similar law that was passed in France that talked about that all companies have to have a social impact statement in their company's developed materials, their charters, their initial work. And it happened, right? So by passing laws, by passing policies, by working on what you want to see, you can derive value from that as well. And finally, you want to not just start with your institution, but look at your regional level and look at your national strategies. So I see several people here from India and from Sri Lanka and from Vietnam. So working together to set up that national strategy will give you the opportunity to have one voice that comes together. So when we're trying to make an impact within our community, our voices are small. But when we come together and we bring lots of different people who are saying the same thing, then we really get that opportunity to impact at that national level. And finally, you get that reputation, the recognition and the social knowledge and mindset that you're looking for with that sustained impact. So in order to continue to keep this going, you also have to measure and report on what you're doing. It's not enough to do it. You also have to have insights and bring back lessons learned. So one of those things you want to do is develop those key metrics early on. We already have those metrics for standard tech transfer practices. How many licenses did you do? How many patents did you file? How many startups did you create? But I want you to think about what are some of the metrics that might have more social impact. So for example, how many lives did you potentially impact? How many jobs did you create? How much funding did you do that went in partnership match with an NGO for your region? How many opportunities did you bring for someone to be on that board? So what are the key metrics that can be in alignment with your social impact? And then building on those lessons learned. So maybe that plant that we created that is drought resistant, it works fantastically in Sri Lanka. But when we take it over to Indonesia, we find out that the amount of salinity in the water is such that it doesn't work. But we can find that partnership, right? So we can work with those people in Sri Lanka who created it and with researchers in Indonesia to modify that plant. And we don't do it at a cost. We're not doing a license agreement that brings in a lot of revenue. We're doing it for the social good. We also want to make sure we're pivoting where needed. So a lot of times it's something, a conversation we have with our innovators, and we say fast fail. And they say, no, I'll never fail. This is my baby. It's perfect how it is. But as a tech transfer office, you know you need to pivot. You know you need to be able to focus on the key target areas of interest and that those might change. So you need to define them, focus on them, and if they change, and go with it and go in that new direction. And make sure you share your successes and your failures. So a lot of times people like to talk about what they did that worked, but they don't talk about what they did that didn't work. And without sharing your failures, people are doomed to repeat it. And especially with social impact innovation, there's just not as much money out there as we want there to be. So don't waste someone's money by not being willing to share what failed. Be open to the conversation and talk about where you had to pivot. What are some of the challenges you faced? And make sure you're developing language that can be readily transferred to those stakeholders and those new partners. If you're talking about a success or a failure that you had, couching it in a way that makes people invested in what you're saying and makes them want to continue to work with you for that sustainable future that we mentioned. And finally, make sure you build on your successes. So iterate and grow from your first programs. We might want to start with that one plant that has the ability to withstand a drought, but can we keep going? Are there other agricultural crops? Can we partner with aquaculture? Can we derive and grow from what we had? And help others implement your work within their areas. So I mentioned if we were transferring that from Sri Lanka to Indonesia, what can we do to help demonstrate that competence and that reliability that you're setting up so that you do become known with that reputation of someone who is strong, who is able to help not just your community locally or regionally or even nationally, but internationally? And then support that impact investing. Do this by creating and staffing and monitoring socially responsive accelerators and grow opportunities for that social technological innovators and entrepreneurs that we all have within our communities. So reputations are built over time through consistent behavior, transparency, and results. I have some resources and I'll share this deck with you after. Say thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing you all at the summit in November. Please feel free to connect with me, and I'm going to stop sharing and ask if you would like to ask any questions or make any comments.
Oh, thank you, Megan. Um, yeah, so we invite everyone to put in the chat or put in the Q&A because this is a public webinar. I don't think they can put a question on the chat, but they can put it on the Q&A. Okay. So I have a question. When you start to do a social innovation, people start to copy it, right? And they want to have it in their own community, and somehow you have to create that mechanism, right, for them to copy what you're doing, but at the same time you still want to have some ownership in the idea. I mean, how do you create a mechanism for them? Because for copying allows it to be scaled, right? If you can apply it in three communities, then you cannot you cannot do it in 300 communities. You need other people to do it. So how do you create that mechanism for people to you know to to copy this and to do it in their own communities?
Yeah, so some of it comes down to the standards practices that we already know. So you can use copyright, for example, if you're creating a document or you're creating a software program. And copyright law is available everywhere, but you do have to copyright within every country that you choose to move into. And so you can set limitations on the use of it. Copyright allows for 7 different limitations. You can limit the derivative works, you can limit the distribution, you can limit the copying, and so forth. So you want to set those regular intellectual property protections around it. The second thing you're doing is building on your reputation. So as an example, here in the United States, a former Autumn chair, Mark Saddam, he works at New York University, and they have created an AI system for tech transfer officers to use that is safe, that doesn't put your information out into the public. And Mark went to the Autumn conference, and Mark starts talking about his work, and he says, any university that wants to try this out, let me know. I'll work with you to find out how to white label it for your institution, and you'll build off of our backbone, our platform. And because Mark had a reputation already, people started taking him up on it. And then they started talking about it. And then University of Maryland said, oh, I really like what they're doing, but they focus on life sciences. We have more work in the physical sciences. I'm going to twist this a little bit. But you go back to Mark and you say, hey, Mark, do you mind if I do a derivative of this? And so by having that strong reputation up front, people will come back and talk to you about it. And then the third thing to think about as you're protecting that work is making sure that what you're putting together is a strong, cohesive product. So if it's just loose ideas, and as we all know, you can't actually protect an idea. So you need to have more than just a loose idea in order to make sure that that copying and that replication is consistent going forward.
And also, I think the branding could also work with that, right? If Mark has his own brand for this social innovation, then they can add that. Okay, part the reputation also rides with the brand.
Brands are overlooked a lot. So getting a trademark, or even just putting on a non-trademarked brand or name or disclaimer or something that allows you to continue to use your personalized information as it gets transferred and copied is very important. And I
Okay.
see several questions in the
Yeah.
chat. So, Ensign, you've got your hand raised, and I see a question in the chat. Do you want to speak up?
So, can you allow person to speak up? Who do you want to?
Can you raise your hand again so that we can allow you to speak?
Anson, Mr. Anson. Yeah, go ahead, Anson.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, thank you for the wonderful lecture, and I'm really interested with your thoughts and on social innovation. It helps me a lot. Also, very interesting one. And I have a concerns. I have two concerns, like whether life-saving innovations belongs more to society or to inventors. That my direct question. The other thing is whether this compulsory licensing will work in social or in the social innovation, whether it will affect or whether it will bring prosperity to the economy or it will kill the innovation skill of social innovation. These are the two things. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for bringing this topic into your attention. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that my innovators talk about a lot. I've had a lot of them come to me and say, I don't want you to patent what I'm doing. I don't want you to try to license what I'm doing because I want to make my innovation free to the public because I think that's the best and only way that it will impact society. And that sometimes can work. So I was working with a researcher who was creating new lights that could be used in core starved regions to attract more fish to the core, to increase the diversity of the core that could be grown in that region. And in that case, I might have been able to get a patent on something. I might have even been able to license that something. But the impact that we were looking to have, which was immediate dissemination to core starved regions around the world, was better served by putting that out in an open source. But as Vlad and I were just mentioning, we don't put it out there without attribution. So we're still putting that reputation around that product. We're still saying this product came out of the Ohio State University. This product was still created by this faculty member. So even when you're putting something out there for free, you're still putting that reputation around it. You're still building that brand and that insight. On the flip side, if you're developing something like a new cancer drug, the amount of money that it costs to bring that to market means that you really do have to put that patent protection around it. You really do have to license it. But you can license it with terms. So one of the things that we talked about is putting in expectations around what those companies do with that drug. So for example, in your license agreement, you might say, we expect that after the first 100 million in sales, that a 5% decrease in cost on drugs in economically depressed regions will be added for the licensing of this right to this drug. So be creative. Think about ways that you can still give those life-saving innovations to the public. And it just depends on the type of innovation. So the goal of this is to be thoughtful, be creative. Don't just try to follow the same thing over and over.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. In India, we have a compulsory licensing mechanism by the government as Section 3 is superseding that, saying that any company which can come and produce for a lesser price of a patent innovation, that they can market it for the lesser price, even if the respect of the innovation is creating monopoly. We have a compulsory licensing mechanism in India. Patent IP is a necessary evil compared to necessary evil for us, but certain underdeveloped countries or least developed countries, some evil part of that also persists. Like what we can say, it is sometimes it is not affordable, especially in life-saving drugs, especially in major frontline innovations. We are not able to in South Asia, and especially some of the regions, we are not able to, that is not affordable to us. Is so can you have any different model other than IP to cater our needs, as you suggested in your lecture? You are suggesting some pivot table or something, that pivot table works or something. It's you have any suggestion that can cater the countries with the low income or least developed countries, they can use it for their social innovation, for that life-saving drugs or something. I'm concerned about life-saving drugs, nothing else. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, certainly. And I think one of the things that you can think about is going outside of your own market initially. So you might not be starting in India. You might be starting in a country that is more able to afford what you're putting together. You might also want to think about working with your government to set up some sort of a funding mechanism. Not every innovation would be able to benefit from it, but again, going back to getting those laws and those policies on your side. But I think it's certainly a topic I'd like to explore more and see what some of the others on this webinar and in our session have to say as well. So I would say if we can keep that in mind when we have our IP Summit in November, let's talk a little bit more about what some of those pros and cons and challenges come about in that space. Certainly it's one that you're not alone on.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for answering that. Thank you for giving me a suggestion. So thank you for answering my question. Wonderful session. I actually incited from your session. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
I hope we will meet on that.
Thank you, Anson. And now we have Dolini from Sri Lanka. Hi, Dolini.
Hi, Vlad, and hi, Megan. Thank you for that really insightful session. One of the questions I'm having is how do we quantify the impact of social innovations? And because sometimes it's important for us to convince the funding agencies or the institutes that we are belonging to that there's a certain impact of what we are doing. So do you have any tips or any ideas about that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of them, but again, you might need to develop metrics. So you might need to think about how does this align with your institutional goals, your regional goals, your government's goals. Pardon me. One of the things to think about is how well does it tick off some of the UN Sustainability Development Goals? So there are 17 of those. How many of those
Yeah.
are you addressing with your impact? What is the potential economic value for your region? Do you have jobs that can be created around this? And what is the benefit for your institution directly? So that reputation is extremely valuable. Shalini in the chat mentioned the community trust in the social capital. And so that's some of the things that you might think about as well. So a lot of our institutions are trying to drive more student engagement, right? Because they want students that come, pay tuition, and that's a good thing. So if your students are looking for ways to change the world, and you actually have stories of how the people at that institution are changing the world, that's social capital, and that's also valuable. So making sure that you're finding a way to tailor your messaging and tailor those metrics to your stakeholders is a really impactful part of this.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan.
So these metrics are things we report like as a part of the output of our social innovations. So we have Shalini from India. Hi, Shalini.
Hi everyone. Megan, great talk. And I think you already touched upon what I asked in my question is when we talk about innovation for social good, it's of course intellectual property, patents, copyrights, and so on come out of it, but there is also a sense of community, uh, some sense of local know-how that is created if indigenous, perhaps taking into account indigenous knowledge, and there is social capital that is now turned into currency. So if we are talking about, then you talked about monetizing those innovations as well in terms of licensing and so on. But if we could now start valuing these additional intangible assets along with the ones that is recognized by statutes, then it would help in measuring the impact of those innovations in a more holistic manner. But we
Yeah.
don't have the resources for that yet. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think some of it is don't think you have to go big initially. So one of the things that I found is it starts small. I work with some very small, very rural, very frankly, very poor institutions in Kentucky. And one of the things that we found is that we talked with their stakeholders about what drivers were most impactful to them. One of those was students. These were small institutions who didn't have enough students coming in, they would fail. Another one of those is that they were looking to bring in higher level faculty. So they wanted faculty who had stronger reputation to join their institution. And so one of the things those faculty were looking for was knowing that they would be supported in their tech transfer journey, and knowing that there were opportunities for them to get help with their research. And so again, it goes back to knowing those metrics, knowing what your stakeholder wants, and knowing that and defining that value proposition for those stakeholders. So a lot of times I recommend that tech transfer offices develop your own version of a business model canvas, your own version of a value proposition. So when it comes to social impact and social innovation spaces, what are those metrics that are driving people, and what can you define if they're not there? So when we're thinking about it, think about it starting with your institution and then go out from there. You don't have to say, I want to drive people to India. You can say, I want to drive people to, Mumbai. I want to drive people to the Darjeeling region. I want to drive people to India. So you can start small and broaden out. I know Mumbai is not in Darjeeling. But I think what we really have to do is what we can do with the resources we have. And one of the resources we all on this call have is the ability to talk. We have the ability to share our stories. We have the ability to define the conversation we want to have in a way that will drive that benefit.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it's a good idea that everything doesn't have to be on a national or a global scale. We can start with something that impacts what's immediate to us. Okay.
Yeah.
Bite size.
But I think as you start something small, you know, you prepare for success. That
Right.
if it succeeds, then this could really, you know, explode, become viral, and many people would like to have it for their own communities. Okay. But we have from Haranur Rashid of Bangladesh. Do we have Haranur here? Harun? Okay. Okay. So we can start first with Vani Shri. Okay. Hi, Vani. Okay. I think Harun is ready. Okay. Hi, Harun.
Hi, Vlad. Hello, Megan. It was really interesting to learn about these social innovations. I was wondering about the idea of social business. I'm from Bangladesh, and the chief advisor of the interim government is Professor Yunus, who introduced the idea of social business. And the first social business in Bangladesh that he started with Grameen is a joint venture with Danone that produced with a very little innovation, a supplementation of zinc in the yogurt, providing to the earliest children who are suffering from zinc deficiencies. So I was wondering whether this could be one of the ways of connecting social innovations and social business. What do you think, Megan? I was kind of, you can say, I was thinking loudly while listening to your lecture. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of these kind of opportunities to celebrate and enhance the social impact component of a business. So you may have heard of a B Corp, which is a way to set up a company, an S Corp, C Corp, B Corp. And B Corp is a company that is a for-profit corporation with a social impact component as part of their mission. And so certainly I think that, as I mentioned, policies and laws can make a difference here. So if your country is looking to create more social impact, setting up opportunities for social businesses and structuring incentives for those businesses to operate is a key way to go about it. And I think, Haroon, I'd love to learn more about what you all have done. Have you had any successes in that space? Or, what are some of the challenges you're hearing about as you're going about to implement that within your community?
In our university, I'm from Bangladesh Agricultural University, and in the universities, we don't have a culture of actually patenting or copywriting innovations. But what we do, we develop a lot of crop varieties and we transfer them to the communities. And without any patent rights, they are transferred to the communities and they get benefited. I was listening to your lecture earlier in your experience in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. We have developed salt soil varieties for the coastal south uh, that is being actually adopted by the people, particularly the rice varieties. So this is how we find our technologies being transferred and translated, but without any umbrella of IP protection per se, because this is not a very common culture that we have in our country for the universities. But we also, innovators are also feeling that yes, we need some recognitions and bringing them into the IP structure as well, not for the not for the rights or profits from the innovation, but for the protection of the innovation and their just use. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. I think the story of golden rice is a cautionary tale that is worth making sure, if any of the listeners don't know, it's worth making sure you know what that is. But I also think the value of putting intellectual property around agricultural products is still an important one. And so I'll give an example of in the University of Michigan, Michigan's a state in the United States. They developed a certain strain of blueberries. Michigan is a very large blueberry producing state. And they were shipping that strain of blueberries over to the Ukraine and to Russia. And then when Putin attacked the Ukraine and the supply chain was disrupted, they pulled back because they had intellectual property protection on those blueberries. Putin was no longer recognizing intellectual property protection outside of Russia. The University of Michigan no longer felt comfortable putting their blueberries into that region of the world. And they did that because they had that intellectual property protection that gave them that reputation, and they wanted to protect that reputation. So intellectual property on agriculture, on crops, can be in the form of a plant patent. It can be in the form of a copyright or a trademark. You might have heard of cotton candy grapes, but that's a trademarked type of grape that we have. I worked with an institution here in Kentucky that was trademarking certain pawpaw varieties that they had named. And so even though you got intellectual property on something, it doesn't mean that you can't still distribute it out. It just gives you that one more layer of protection that can be crucial for helping as you're going outside of the boundaries of your own country.
Yeah, I think it's also protection that other organizations cannot copy it. For if you want to make it for the social good, then the protection allows you to keep it for the social good, and plus you still have some option to have it profitable.
Yeah, so again, a reminder that I'm sure none of us need is that intellectual property allows you to exclude others from using. It doesn't necessarily give you the right to practice it yourself. So if your goal is to create social opportunity and social impact, having that power to exclude can still be a useful tool as well.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So I think Vani cannot speak on the microphone, but her question is, in your experience, what is the most effective way for innovators working on social good to convert their know-how into scalable, impactful solutions, especially when resources and market readiness are limited?
Yes, so I think this is where that fast fail and having those hackathon style events can make a difference. So if you bring people together and allow them to talk it out, put in proper intellectual property and conflicts and confidentiality in place, it's useful for people to take that base level know-how, those ideas, and to think about ways to develop solutions with them. And then once you have that hackathon, once you test out 20 ideas, you might be able to shrink it down to 2 or 3 ideas. And those 2 or 3 ideas, then you can run them through that value proposition. I don't know, Vlad, if we're going to share business model canvases with the group, but certainly I would recommend that everybody do some version of a business model canvas on any of those innovative ideas that do kind of funnel down. And then that way you can see what is that market readiness? What are the things that will be required to make it market ready? And then what kind of resources are needed? So actually writing that down can sometimes make it easier. As we mentioned earlier, it's a bite by bite approach. So you're not going to immediately take an idea and then save the world. That's just not how it works. But you can take an idea, turn it into an innovation, and then bite by bite work on what are the resources needed? How can we meet one of those resources? What is the market readiness requirements? How can we make it just move one more step further? And then can we test it? Can we do a pilot in a place? So I had an inventor who was from Nepal, and she said, in my community, we see that a lot of farmers are losing a lot of money because in order to bring their produce to market, they have to pay somebody to transport it. Then they have to pay somebody else to sell it. Then they have to pay somebody else to return the money to them. And so in order to go from the rural country where she lived up north into the city, it was a lot of money that was being lost by the farmers. And so what she wanted to do was to create a way for farmers to directly sell to their end users. So what we did was we looked at what that actually would look like, and we came up with the idea of just having a marketplace at the local church. So on Saturdays, farmers would bring whatever produce they could to their local community, the church they were already walking to, and then they would list it available for sale. And then we said, well, what if somebody's too old to be able to even do that? Then we talked about a bartering system. So maybe somebody who is passing that farm could pick it up and they'd be able to sell 20% of the crops themselves, and then they'd sell the other 80% on behalf of the farmer. So we were looking at those barriers, and then we were looking at what are some of those solutions and testing that market capacity. So if that small community church worked, then maybe we could spread the message out to the next community, and then the next community after that. So starting small and thinking about what is really the need and really defining the value that you're offering and piloting that within a low-cost way can be still majorly impactful in the longer term.
Okay, great. It was a rich discussion, and we are looking forward to hearing more about social innovation in the IP Summit. So we will see you in person, okay, later. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who attended this webinar. I don't think we can open cameras, right? But thank you to all. Okay, we took screenshots already, and we look forward to seeing you in the next meeting. Okay, here in Ho Chi Minh City. Okay, see you, Megan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, kindly share the link of your slides so that we can also share it with the participants.
Yes, I will send
Thank
that
you.
to you. Bye, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Bye. Thank you.